There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. You show up, you give, you wait, you care. And then one day, quietly, without warning, you realize you were never really in their picture. You were just there, filling a space, supporting a scene, but never written into the story. It's a strange kind of heartbreak, not from betrayal, not from loss, but from the slow erosion of your own self-worth. You weren't seen, not really. You were needed, maybe, but only in the way a chair is needed, to be sat on, to carry weight, to be useful until they no longer need to sit. This isn't about blame. It's about waking up. It's about facing the quiet truth. You are not a side character. You are not here to be used, tolerated, or occasionally acknowledged. So today, I want us to look together, honestly, gently, at the signs we often overlook. Not to point fingers, but to reclaim what's been quietly slipping away. Your time, your energy, your dignity, your place in your own story. If you've ever felt unseen in a relationship, this may be the moment you finally start seeing yourself again. There's a kind of tired that doesn't come from work. It comes from always being the one who cares more, the one who checks in, the one who reaches out first, the one who apologizes, even when they don't know what for. You plan, you remember, you show up, but slowly you begin to realize you're rowing a boat with someone who's not even holding an oar. They're just sitting back, enjoying the ride. And after a while, your arms ache, not just from the effort, but from the silence. There's a cruelty in that silence. Because when the effort is one-sided, the silence starts to speak. It says, "You're not worth the same energy you give." And you start to believe it. We often ignore this imbalance, not because we don't see it, but because we're scared. Scared that if we stop rowing, they'll leave. But what kind of bond needs fear to stay afloat? If your presence depends on your exhaustion, it's not love. It's survival. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they all spoke of integrity, of self-respect, of never bending so far for others that you break your own spine. Aurelius once said, "Never consider anything good for your soul if it causes you to lose respect for yourself." So why do we stay in patterns that drain us? Because we're conditioned to value connection, even if it's at our own expense. But let me tell you this, effort is beautiful when it's mutual. When it's not, it becomes weight. And eventually, that weight turns into resentment. You begin to resent how much you care. You begin to resent how little they notice. Worse, you start resenting yourself for allowing it. Relationships aren't about scorecards, no. But when only one person keeps showing up, it's not a relationship. It's a performance. And you're the whole cast, the crew, and the ticket holder, alone in your own theater. Maybe you've made excuses for them. They're just busy. They've been through a lot. But if you're always explaining their absence, maybe they've already exited. You deserve someone who's just as eager to reach out, just as quick to remember. You deserve rest. You deserve reciprocity. And above all, you deserve peace that doesn't require pain as payment. There's a quiet kind of disappointment that settles in when someone only shows up for you when it's easy for them, when it's convenient, when it fits their mood, their schedule, their needs. And the rest of the time, you're left on read or worse, left wondering if you ever matter to them at all. This is what selective availability feels like. It's not overt rejection. It's not cruelty. It's that slow, consistent pattern of not being chosen. Unless you're useful. Unless they're lonely. Unless they want something. You try not to take it personally. You remind yourself they're just busy. But deep down, you know, if someone wanted to be there, they would be. And if they don't show up when it counts, maybe they were never truly present in the first place. Seneca said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. But kindness isn't kindness if it only arrives when it's easy. That's not connection. That's convenience." You begin to see the pattern. They reply quickly when it benefits them. They're warm when they're bored. But when you're the one in need, silence. And that silence, it doesn't just hurt, it erodes. It teaches you that your needs are too much, that asking for care is a burden. You shrink, you adapt, you make yourself smaller, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'll have space for you if you take up less. But listen, people who care show up, not when it's easy, when it's needed. The ones who love you won't always get it right, but they'll try. They'll reach out, not only when they're low, but when you are too. If someone is only present when they benefit from it, they're not being a friend. They're being a consumer of your time, your energy, your kindness. You are not a gas station. You are not a vending machine for emotional comfort. You are a human being with needs, with value, with a heart that deserves to be met with presence, not just proximity. Recognizing this is painful, but it's also freeing. You don't have to chase half-hearted people anymore. When someone disappears every time it's hard for them, let them go. You're not meant to be someone's backup plan or part-time companion. Your presence should be cherished, not picked up and put down like an old habit. Sometimes the deepest loneliness isn't being alone. It's being with someone who just doesn't care to know you. They smile, they ask, "How was your day?" But they don't wait for the answer. Or worse, they change the subject mid-sentence. They don't know your dreams. They forget your stories. They don't even know what makes your eyes light up. And what's worse, you notice it. You always notice it. But you tell yourself it's fine, that maybe you talk too much, that maybe they're just not that expressive. But deep down, it hurts. Because it's not about needing attention. It's about wanting connection. You can't build a relationship where one side is curious and the other side is bored. That's not love. It's tolerance. Real relationships thrive on mutual interest, on a two-way street of discovery. The kind where someone asks about your childhood, not just your schedule. Where someone remembers your favorite book, not just your last meal. Aristotle called this the friendship of the good, a bond rooted in shared virtues and genuine care. Anything less than that? It's performance. Seneca said relationships should never be built on gain alone. But in the absence of genuine interest, that's all that's left. What they get from being around you, not who you are. You find yourself talking less, sharing less. Not because you have nothing to say, but because no one's really listening. You laugh at the right times. You nod. But inside, a question grows. If I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice what's missing? That question changes you. It makes you cautious, distant. You stop offering pieces of yourself to someone who never cared to hold them in the first place. Carl Jung once said that meaningful relationships are essential to self-realization. When interest is absent, it's not just the bond that suffers, it's your identity that slowly fades. You're not meant to be someone's background noise. You're not here to fill silence or space. You are a whole, layered, beautiful life, meant to be seen, heard, and understood. The people who care, they won't just ask, "How are you?" They'll wait. They'll lean in. They'll remember. And you'll feel it. Not just in their words, but in their eyes, their timing, their presence. Not all control looks like shouting. Sometimes it sounds like, "I guess I just care more than you do." Sometimes it feels like guilt when you say no to something that doesn't feel right. Emotional manipulation rarely comes wearing a warning label. It comes disguised as love, as care, as intimacy. But beneath the surface, it erodes your trust in yourself. They twist your words. They make you question your reactions. They cry at just the right time to silence your anger. They leave just long enough for you to beg them back. It's subtle, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because the more it happens, the less you trust your own emotions. You think, maybe I'm too sensitive, or worse, maybe it really is my fault. But it's not your fault. It's not weakness to want clarity. It's not selfish to need boundaries. Epictetus taught that while we cannot control what others do, we must learn to control how we respond. And when manipulation enters the room, the most powerful response is clarity. Clarity says, "I hear your pain, but I won't carry the weight of your choices. I can love you and still say no. I won't be punished for having needs." Marcus Aurelius spoke of integrity, the kind that stays rooted, even when storms rise. If someone's love comes with strings attached, that's not love, that's debt. Seneca wrote about tranquility of the mind and how we must protect it as fiercely as we would our own home. Emotional manipulation is a burglar. It sneaks in quietly, rearranges your beliefs, and makes you feel crazy for noticing something's missing. You deserve better. You deserve to speak without fear, to ask without being punished, to feel without being doubted. Western psychology calls this gaslighting. It's when someone convinces you that your experience isn't real, that your instincts are wrong, that your memory can't be trusted. But your body remembers. Your breath shortens. Your stomach turns. You walk on eggshells, even in silence. That's not connection. That's control. True love isn't a contract you sign under pressure. It's not something you earn by sacrificing your peace. It's not meant to confuse, belittle, or break you down. So if you feel like you're constantly walking a tightrope, ask yourself, is this love? Or is it manipulation dressed up as affection? The answer might change everything. You say no, and they laugh it off. You set a limit, and they push it, just to see if you'll hold the line. You explain what you need, and somehow the conversation always turns back to them. This is what it looks like when someone disrespects your boundaries. It doesn't always show up as aggression. Sometimes it's casual, charming even. But every time they dismiss your voice, something inside you goes quieter. You start to second-guess yourself. You wonder if maybe you're too rigid, too sensitive, too much. And so you bend, just a little, then again, and again, until one day, you don't recognize yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Respect yourself above all." But in relationships where boundaries are optional for the other person, self-respect becomes a negotiation, and you're the only one losing. Seneca spoke of balance, the space between self-preservation and connection. If you're always giving up your space to maintain peace, that's not balance. That's erasure. When your time is ignored, when your emotions are belittled, when your no is taken as a maybe, that's not love. That's entitlement. And entitlement rarely stops at small things. It grows. They expect you to always answer, always agree, always adapt. And when you don't, you're difficult, cold, not who you used to be. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. Healthy ones, clear ones. They say, you can come in, but only with respect. Without boundaries, love becomes obligation, and what started as connection becomes control. Carl Jung believed that self-realization comes from knowing where you end and someone else begins. If someone keeps stepping into your space without knocking, they're not building intimacy. They're eroding identity. Epictetus taught that our power lies in what we choose to accept and what we firmly reject. So ask yourself, what have you been allowing that goes against your peace? What small things have you ignored just to keep someone close? Because love, true love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It meets you where you are and says, I honor who you are, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Some relationships look fine on the surface. You laugh, you text, you share meals, but when you leave, you feel strangely empty. There's no fight, no drama, just a quiet hollowness, a sense that, despite all the time spent, you were never really seen. This is the weight of superficial connection. It's not toxic, it's not warm either. It lives in the middle, polite, convenient, safe, but it never asks who you really are. And it never offers who they truly are either. The conversations stay in the shallow end. Work, weather, schedules, small wins, but not your fears, not your regrets, not the stuff that matters. You learn to adjust, to make yourself simple, palatable, light. Because the moment you bring depth into the space, the air changes. They look uncomfortable. They change the subject, or worse. They dismiss your depth with silence. Seneca said that friendships must be built on mutual benefit, not just enjoyment. But superficial bonds don't offer depth or growth, only company, temporary warmth, filler for the silence. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that what matters most is what's beneath, not appearances, not performances. And yet, how many of us stay in hollow rooms just to avoid being alone? You deserve more than light talk and surface laughs. You deserve someone who looks at you and says, "Tell me what you're not saying." Someone who notices when your smile is a little tighter than usual. Someone who cares enough to ask twice when you answer, "I'm fine." Because real connection, it's not about perfect conversations. It's about presence, about staying when the conversation gets real, even messy. It's about two people willing to go deep, even when it's uncomfortable. Aristotle believed in friendships of virtue, connections rooted in honesty, respect, and a desire to grow together. Superficial ties never touch that soil. They float, they fade, and eventually they leave you wondering if any of it was real. Carl Jung said self-realization can't happen in isolation, but it also can't happen in relationships that never let you show your full self. So if you're constantly surrounded but feel unknown, you are not crazy. You are not difficult. You are just craving something real, and that craving is sacred. Real bonds require courage. Courage to ask deeper questions. Courage to stay through the uncomfortable answers. And courage to walk away when all you're given is surface. When what you need is soul. It's easy to be there when things are good, when the jokes are flowing, when the sun's out, when you're smiling and asking all the right questions. But what about the days when you go quiet? When your heart is heavy and your words come slow? Where are they then? That's when you find out who's truly with you. Because anyone can sit at your table when there's laughter, but not everyone shows up when there's silence. It's in those hard moments, the losses, the confusion, The days you don't know how to ask for help. That absence speaks the loudest, not in anger, not in explanation, just in empty space, where presence should have been. We tell ourselves not to be a burden. We downplay our needs, our pain, our struggle, because we've learned some people only stay if we're easy to be around. But that's not friendship. That's performance. Marcus Aurelius believed that the essence of a relationship is shared support. When one falls, the other helps rise, not out of duty, but out of shared humanity. Seneca wrote about resilience in solitude, but he also acknowledged that companionship eases the weight of life. And when that companionship disappears in your hardest hours, it isn't neutral. It's abandonment. You start to question your worth, not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't do, because they weren't there when it mattered most. And yet, you still defended them. You still made excuses, because the truth is more painful than the lie. They weren't invested, not in your heart, not in your healing. Carl Jung said that deep human connection is essential to personal growth. But if someone only walks with you when the path is smooth, they're not really walking with you. They're walking with the version of you that's convenient. And that version, it's exhausting to maintain. You shouldn't have to wear your best face to be worthy of presence. You shouldn't have to be fine all the time to be loved. The people who are meant to stay, they'll come closer when you break, not to fix you, but to sit beside you, quiet, present, unafraid of your darkness. So if they disappeared when life got heavy, let that be your clarity, not your shame. Because you deserve people who show up when it's hard, not just when it's fun. You've made it through a quiet unraveling. Together we named the signs you've likely felt but never said out loud. The one-sided effort, the conditional care, the subtle manipulations, the silence during your storms. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you feel less alone. Not because the pain is gone, but because now you can see it clearly. This isn't about anger or regret. It's about coming back to yourself, the version of you that remembers your worth without needing others to validate it. It's not always loud, this return. Sometimes it begins in a whisper. No more chasing, no more shrinking. Because the truth is, you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. So here's the question I'll leave with you. When was the last time someone truly showed up for you, without needing anything in return? If this video gave you something to think about, stay with us. Subscribe if it feels right. Comment if there's a piece of this that echoes something real in you. And as the Stoics would remind us, you cannot control who stays, but you can always choose who you become in their absence.